Just so everyone
Mute
knows,
us for a minute.
the cleaning staff's in tonight. If they come up to the water, they're gonna shut the door.
Okay. We're good? Okay, council. It is very nearly 6 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Remind everyone to please disclose of any pecuniary interest at the appropriate time. And we are streaming live on YouTube at the link on the agenda. And I'll also note the acknowledgement of our ancestral land that's printed on the agenda as well. And we will go to the minutes of the previous council meeting of August 8th, 2022. And we need a mover and a seconder to approve those. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Westgate. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All in favor? That is carried. And we have the scheduled events listed on our agenda as well. If there's any changes, then I'm sure staff will let us know. We will go to councillors' commitments and items. Does anyone have any changes to the councillors' commitments at this time? Seeing none, we will start with councillor items. Councillor White, do you have anything for council tonight?
Just checking in on the roads, both Arcona Road and First School Road for grading. Just wondering if we can get on a regular schedule that a grader goes down there once a week because they're pretty bad. Yeah. Just during the construction right now. Both are getting a lot heavier traffic, so.
Is it just grading or should we be putting on some sort of treatment in order to try to keep the dust down?
Likely some treatment as well. Arcona Road's pretty dusty. And I know they're both washboardy, like, so I'm hoping there's enough gravel there still, so.
With Andrew being off, I'll make a call and talk to Public Works, just so that everyone knows we're at the maximum of the budget this year. It's going to be an overflow, but it's necessary.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Councillor White on the way here. It was pretty whoa, washboardy. I was like, oh goodness, this can't be good. But they did reduce the speed, which I think helps with the dust and all of the traffic and everything as well. So that's a good point. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Councillor Morris.
I have a couple of items. First of all, I'd like to thank Heather. She did an excellent job at the decoration day the other day. Never been doing the front line before and stepping up to it. I greatly appreciate it. We had a very good crowd. There was a little over 50 there. I was very impressed. Very good. One comment I did get, maybe Heather, if you could record it, please, is for somebody from the cemetery committee and or council to attend the Warwick Decoration Day. We seem to have not realized it was on or missed it or something, but it was brought to my attention on Sunday. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know I did attend Warwick Decoration Day before COVID, pre-COVID at one point, but that's a very good point if we just have that reminder, because that one's just as important. Councillor Westgate.
I have nothing today.
Okay, I have quite a bit, actually. I'm just going to give you all an update on our AMO delegations. We had 4 successful delegations at AMO this year. We met with Carolyn Mulrooney, the Minister of Transportation, on the exit off ramp of the 402. And she did say that they did a study on that exit. And at this time, it does not show that there's any changes that are required. However, the ministry did recognize that we are still in COVID times. And at the time of the study, we were still, I believe, in the lockdown when they did the initial cameras and all of that. So they have agreed that they would look at that again. They had suggested the fall. However, Councillor Morris and I both thought that it would be best to wait until the summer of 2023, once the roundabout is opened up and we resume normal traffic activity down Nauvoo Road. We didn't think the bulk of the traffic was during the fall. It's mainly in the summertime that we get the bulk of it. So they agreed prior to AMO next year that they would be looking at that again. We met with the Minister of Environment, David Passini, about the waste management expansion. We had a very dynamic conversation about the importance of our community having the best environmental regulations to make sure that they're running a top-notch facility there, and discussing the expansion as well. We had met with the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Affairs about Minister Lisa Thompson. We had a fantastic conversation with her about making sure that CN Rail is paying their fair share of the drainage projects in our municipalities. And we were advised by Minister Thompson that this is a project or a problem all along the rail, with municipalities all along the rail wanting to make sure that that is being paid for. So we're going to be working together with Minister Thompson and with the other neighboring municipalities to try to come up with a solution for that and put some pressure on CN Rail. And we met again with the Minister Khalid Rashid, Ministry of Business and Consumer Affairs, about the proposed changes to the cemetery care and maintenance funds, and had a good conversation and follow up with them on that as well. I had a great presentation with Wilcox Bros. We had planned on doing their 50th presentation 2 years ago, that they were 50 years in the community, and it never happened because of COVID. So we were able to, because Wilcox Bros has sold their operations to Melbourne Farms, we wanted to make sure that we showed our appreciation. So Councillor Morris and I went and did that on Saturday, giving them a plaque. And we look forward to Melbourne Farms. It sounds like they have some great plans for the community as well. Did you want to comment on that, Councillor Morris?
Yeah, it looks like a good changeover. All the employees are staying. The business is staying in Watford. It's not leaving. So I think you'll see more activity in Watford. I still have a job. So I guess everything's going good.
That's great. Just a reminder to council and the public that we will be hosting the public movie night on Wednesday, beginning at 7 p.m. at Centennial Park, along with Lambton Public Health. So that'll be fun for the community to be able to get together for that. And the Lambton County Plowing Match is set for Saturday at 148 Rokeby Line. I will be plowing in the municipal class. I will do my best to make us proud, but we'll see what happens. And I had one other thing. I had called about booking the new hall for the Catholic Women's League Skit Night. And at that time, Emily was not sure what the pricing schedule was going to look like. And so people are calling our staff right now to book the hall, and we don't have a set schedule for pricing. And I didn't know how council felt about that. If we wanted to, do you want to speak to that, Trevor?
Yeah, Ryan has done some work to look at neighboring halls and everything like that, what the costs are and everything like that. He's away on vacation. I was away on vacation. We're meeting on Thursday or Friday this week to hopefully finalize that and have something out. The only thing is, it's going to go out for the price of the new hall before it comes to council, if we're going to do it that way. Other than that, it's not going to be until the next council meeting that we come with a price point presentation.
It's up to council, but I was wondering if we wanted to go with the existing fees that we were charging for the Centennial Hall for the first few months. I'm not saying in perpetuity, but it's just until we get staff. It's just hard when people are calling for the hall to rent it if you don't have a fee in place. And it could be, I'm assuming at least the next council meeting before we get something set.
It'll definitely be the next council meeting that we have to do it, because it's going to tie into the budget. It's the last one I have before then. So.
When do they say it's going to be ready to rent?
We were looking at booking it December, like the first Thursday in December, or the first Wednesday and Thursday in December. So, but I don't know if they have a set date 100%, but we're looking at mid-October, I believe, is that we're still on track. As far as the impression I got when we did our tour with the fundraising committee. Is that what you thought too, Councillor White?
That was what they said, but it seemed like there was still a lot to do.
Yeah.
I hate to rent a hall out that's not ready. And it should be well inspected before it's out, so we should hold off until at least the 1st of December, I think. And if they haven't got it done by then, well, let's, and I think we should be charging more than the other hall. It's already a lot more space and stuff, a lot better kitchen and everything. And do we have all the kitchen utensils and the tables and chairs? Are they going to be there? And is that all in line for the opening?
I agree with Jerry. I think we should look at a new price, but I have no problem waiting till the next council meeting to, when you come back with the prices. I'm still looking forward to Thanksgiving weekend that they promised us to have the opening, so. Now, I guess we have to be careful that we have the pricing out and they're able to book it before the contractor decides to tear the Centennial Hall down.
Interim, I believe Emily was saying, she had said we are tentatively holding dates for clubs that are interested in booking it or for families, but it's very tentative. Like they're not taking any deposits at this point until we know for sure when it's going to open. So as long as staff is on it, that's good to know. And we'll just wait then until the next council meeting and deal with it at that time then. Okay. Great. Then we will move on to staff items. 9A is a verbal update from Stephanie Catrice on the public survey for the township logo.
Thank you, Mayor Rumbouts. So as you know, the township logo vote started on August the 17th, and notice has been posted on our website and social media pages. We had posters distributed around the municipality and have hard copies available at the township office. And to date, we've had almost 200 people submit their decisions, and we have another 2 weeks left to vote. And I do know some comments have been made regarding the costs associated with rebranding of the logo. So I thought it would be important to address this tonight. So wayfinding and corporate rebranding process was planned as per council's approved strategic plan and are being implemented by staff as per council's direction. Council initially budgeted $20,000 this year for design. However, that was reduced to $10,000 so that more work could be done in-house. And $50,000 has been allocated for the creation and installation of signs in 2023. Staff have applied for a grant to help offset the cost of wayfinding. And while we can't yet disclose the details, we were successful in a portion. It's also important to note that stationery and other items that have the municipality's address on it did have to change because of the relocation of our office. So that acquisition of those have been put on hold to accommodate a new logo of the municipality. And then the remaining items, which are stickers for the 12 municipal vehicles, as well as the gateway signs, signage at the community center, the fire halls, etc., will be replaced. And staff is happy to research what the cost of these will be for the next council meeting, but they are expected to be minimal. And a phased-in approach was presented in the wayfinding presentation and is what is likely to happen. So other than that, everything else is moving along well, and we do encourage everyone to help spread the word so that we can get as many residents to vote as possible, and happy to answer any other questions if council has any.
Councillor Morris, do you have a question?
Yes, I greatly look forward to your cost estimate, Stephanie. That will include all the trucks, all the buildings, all the equipment, and the letterhead, etc. It'll be a total package.
For sure.
Okay.
And I can say that as part of the 10,000 design, we are at least halfway below the $10,000 mark.
Thank you, Stephanie. I know Stephanie stepped up and did a lot of the design work herself, which I believe contributed to the cost savings in that as well. So thank you very much for all your work on that, Stephanie. You did a fantastic job. All right. Any other questions for that before we move on? Okay, we are going to skip over our delegation since they are timed events and go down to accounts payable or the GL report. We need a motion to receive and file that. Thank you, Councillor White and Councillor Westgate. Any questions or comments on the GL report tonight? Anything you'd like? Oh, Councillor Morris, go ahead.
Trevor, how are we doing on, as it goes for the total picture for the year end?
It looks like we're going to be bang on in terms of revenue. We are going to be within, I'd say 90, anywhere from 98% of our target to 102 based on where we're at right now. The only thing that's going to slow us down a little bit is the offset of, we lost a little bit of use due to COVID earlier this year on the arena. But we've offset that with other projects coming in. We're a little bit ahead on where waste management targets are going to be, not significantly, but a little bit. And then our costs, we have been very fortunate. We have found some savings internally on capital projects to use. And our rate increase for insurance has also saved us some money. And we've also had some labor savings because we did not have summer students this year for ourselves. And we've been able to, any cost overflows have been offset by savings, and we're continuing to monitor that as we go.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of receiving and filing that? That is carried. And we'll go down to the non-action correspondence. Is there anything anyone wants to highlight on the non-action correspondence tonight? If not, then we need a motion to receive and file the remainder. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor White. All in favor? That is carried. We have no non-action or no action correspondence, so we'll go down to staff reports. The first one is the completion of the County of Lambton Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and we need a motion to receive and file that. Moved by Councillor Westgate, seconded by Councillor Morris. Any questions or comments on that report? All right, all in favor? That is carried. And we have the award farmland lease industrial park and lagoon lands. There is a recommendation here. How does council want to deal with that recommendation? Councillor Westgate?
I'll move we accept it. It's quite a bit more than we were getting before anyway, so
Okay,
should be good.
and do we have a seconder to that? Councillor White, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? That is carried. And there is the municipal 2022 municipal election update. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that information. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor White. Questions or comments on that? I am assuming that that information will be sent out to the other people running for council. That's fantastic. Good to know. And all in favor of receiving and filing that. That is carried. And we'll go to the update to procedural bylaw for the 2022 to 2026 council term. And of course, this is a living document, so it can change at any time with the new term of council, but it's just getting it set and cleaned up before the next term. So we need a mover and a seconder for that update. Councillor Westgate and Councillor Morris, any questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. We have no committee and other minutes. No new business. And so we have a few minutes, about 12 minutes before we can go to our delegations. We're just getting too good at this, council.
We don't know what's time for recess except for smelling gas.
So the first delegation starts at 6:30. So I'm gonna just have staff turn the cameras off until that time. Just so 12 minutes is a while. Okay, we are back and it is almost 6:30, so we are going to announce that the next item on council's agenda is the holding of the public meeting with respect to an application to amend the zoning bylaw and council's consideration of a bylaw to amend Warwick zoning bylaw 121 of 2012 on lands described as concession 4, SER part lot 19 RP 25R-10133, known municipally as 7910 Industrial Drive in the Township of Warwick. The purpose of the bylaw amendment is to add vehicle sales establishment to the list of permitted uses in the mixed commercial industrial zone. I will ask Ms. Willems, the method of giving public notice of the meeting and the date that notice was given.
Notices were sent by regular mail on August 2nd, 2022, and they were posted on the property on August 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. Any person requiring further notice of the passing of the bylaw should give their name and full mailing address to the clerk before leaving the meeting. Any persons present who wish to make oral or written submissions should provide the clerk with their name and full mailing address. Also, all persons wishing to address the bylaw should ask their question through the chair. The clerk will now read any written submissions.
There was one submission received from the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, and it states that they have no concerns with the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 7910 Industrial Drive.
Okay, and our planner will now give his report.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. Ken Melanson on behalf of the County of Lambton. I'll keep this fairly brief. The application is fairly succinct. The application is seeking to add the use of motor vehicle sales to the list of permitted uses for the subject site. Just for council's clarity, we have added this use to the CM zone in a site-specific way already. There is an existing motor vehicle dealership just on Nauvoo Road. In terms of the application, it is supported by your official plan. The direction in the official plan for those industrial lands is to also include some limited commercial uses, which this falls into. And so staff is recommending approval of the bylaw as presented. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. We will hear from those in favor of the bylaw first and then hear from those opposed. I believe that they are here for any questions, but don't wish to speak at this time. And I don't see anybody opposed to the bylaw. Members of council may provide any questions or comments about the application. All right. Councillor Westgate.
I was just wondering about signage. Have they talked about signage? If it's a motor vehicle sales area, are they going to put signs up?
So through your worship, at this point, it's really dealing with the use, and should council approve the bylaw, the next part of the process will be the site planning phase if there is any. So signage would involve a site plan amendment. My understanding is that any signage is being limited to the building. So I don't think that there's going to be a freestanding one, but if there is, we'll deal with that through the processes we have. Shouldn't be an issue.
Any other questions? All right, typically we end the public meeting and council has up to 15 days from this meeting to decide whether or not to pass this bylaw. And council's decisions are usually mailed to those who have requested it. Does council wish to make a motion at all, or Councillor Morris?
I make a motion that we approve this bylaw for the zoning change.
Okay, do we have a seconder to that? Thank you, Councillor White. Any other comments? All in favor? That is carried. All right. So and we have another break because the next delegation is at 6:45. Congratulations, guys. Have a good night. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good night. So Thank you very much, Ken. We will be shutting off our microphones and camera again until 6:45, in which time we will be hearing from Giovanni Spadafora from Baker Tilly Sarnia for their presentation on the financial statements, followed by Peter Pickfield's presentation of 2022 technical review team at 7. John, are you there? Oh, there he is. Hi, how are you, John?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. We are 1 minute out from the beginning of your delegation. Thank you for your patience.
No problem at all.
Oh, okay. You should have access to share your screen
Okay.
if need be.
Fair enough, yes. I'm gonna do that. Okay.
These last minutes right before the time delegations start always take forever. No.
Okay, I guess it's gonna go on here.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having me. All right, so got the presentation there, have it up on the screen as well. So we'll go through some of the annual requirements here for the audit itself, kind of disclosing a bit. Just gonna move this over just a second, sorry. There we go. And then we'll go through some of the highlights of the statements and of course any questions at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So of course, public sector accounting, that's the framework we're using here. Everyone there's probably fairly familiar now with what that all entails, how municipalities use this as their framework to prepare the statements. That's of course what we do. As of the year-end process, make sure that everything is in line with the public sector requirements so that those standards, the guidance, and everything designed specifically for the public sector is in effect. So that's the case.
John, are you sharing your screen? Because we're not seeing it
On
on our end.
Oh, hold on here.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
There we
it is.
go.
That better? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was highlighted. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So just
No
onto
problem.
the second slide. Yeah, I don't know why I thought it'd go on the one I was hoping for, but anyways, okay. Public sector accounting again. So we do the FIR as part of the year-end process, which is prepared. It's public record and reports on financial and non-financial information, which we have in there. Of course, piece of accounting is all about financial sustainability. So steps to manage short and long-term organizational and financial risks, and adhering to those PSAP requirements provides that relevant financial information for the accountability and informed decision-making for the Township of Warwick, and then also comparability to other municipalities. So the governance process here, we want to get across a combination of processes and structures implemented by council through the management group there to inform, direct, manage, and monitor the activities of the municipalities towards the achievement of financial objectives and financial sustainability. Includes the accountability of the strategic planning and review of the performance of the municipality, including review of the financial statements and of course budget set and variance analysis throughout the year. Also promoting appropriate ethics and values within the organization, ensuring effective organizational performance for management and the accountability, communicating any risk and control information appropriate to the appropriate areas of the organization, and coordinating activities of communicating amongst council, external auditors, ourselves, and management, the details throughout the year, and if there's, again, any risk associated with the financial information or anything that would have happened in the year. So internal controls being a key, part of preparing financial information, and those are those policies, procedures, and processes that provide those operational checks and balances, which help to prevent and detect any errors, fraud, or theft, and provide any warning signs of problems. It also includes measurement and practices that are used to mitigate exposures to risk. Of course, not all risk, but we do hope that it mitigates as best as possible. They operate continuously and are put in place by council and management to be adhered to by all levels of personnel in an organization and provide reasonable assurance that the organization's objectives will be achieved. Now, external auditors can assist in the review of the internal control policies and procurement policies as part of the audit. I can tell you that that is something we do. We test the control environment and we design our testing. Though it is normally fairly substantive testing, we do evaluate the controls in place. So a process is independent of the preparation of any policy guidelines or advisory and focuses on ensuring that the controls and procedures in place ensure best practices, protect the municipality from potentially fraudulent activity, and help identifying steps that would help prevent and detect any wrongdoing. Our review also looks at the efficiency and effectiveness of these controls in place and any procedures, ensuring that there's no management override at any levels of the processes, and maintain appropriate segregation of duties, documentation, authorization, and all that at each level required across the departments. I'm just going to say a quick warning. Sorry, I just noticed what rolled in here is very dark. In case sometimes we're susceptible to lightning causing a bit of a bounce or anything like that. If it were to happen, I do apologize in advance. Okay.
No problem. Thanks for the warning.
All right, so I'll move this along here. So yeah, so independence. So we want to identify the independence our Canadian audit standards require. We communicate this annually. We do that as part of this delegation. And of course, if it did affect in any way our professional judgment or impair anything like that, I can confidently tell you that there is no, we do not hold, or anyone working on the job do not hold any financial interest, either directly or indirectly in the client. We do not hold any position directly or indirectly, giving any right or responsibility to exert any significant influence over the statements or any financial or accounting policies. Next up, no personal or business relationships of any immediate family, close relatives, or anything like that. There's no economic dependence on you as a client or a provision of services in addition to the audit engagement that may impair the overall engagement as well. So that being disclosed, our responsibility as auditors. So as stated in the engagement letter, but we do like to clarify as part of this as well. Our responsibility is to express the opinion on whether financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows of the municipality in accordance with public sector accounting standards. We can confidently say that that is the case. The audit is performed to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance as to whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Due to the inherent limitations of the audit, there is some unavoidable risk and some misstatements of the financial statements that will not be detected, particularly through any intentional misstatement concealed through collusion, even though the audit is properly planned and performed. So our risk assessment approach, like I highlighted as part of the audit approach, its procedures are selected dependent on the auditor's judgment, including the assessment of risk of material misstatement of the statements, whether due to fraud or error. So risk is addressed at specific balances and at times even transactions to determine areas where audit testing may need to be increased. The audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of the policies used, the accounting policies themselves, the reasonableness of accounting estimates made by management, and the overall presentation of the financial statements. And then, of course, any new standards that might be adopted throughout the year. In your case, some specific statements like the remeasurement gain and losses, make sure we're on top of all that. The audit approach highlights, so on a test basis, we examine evidence supported based on the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, including with the departmental budgets. Like I said earlier, we do lean towards substantive testing and analytical review, which is utilized to attain the appropriate level of evidence for reasonable assurance as required. All PSAB accounting standards are met, including accrual accounting, which we'll see in a few minutes, and the tangible capital assets that are set up on the statements of financial position and amortized annually. And then overall changes in the net financial asset reported based on annual surplus or deficits in operations, the capital purchasing, and changes to reserve balances, again, which we'll see in a few moments. So council's responsibilities, of course, making known to the auditor any issues of disclosure, corporate governance, fraud, or any illegal acts or non-compliance with laws or regulatory requirements that are known to them, and any such matters that may impact the financial statements or independent auditor's report. Provide any guidance or direction to the auditor as part of the process on any additional work that the auditor or the council may feel that should be undertaken in response to any issues raised. And then making any inquiries as appropriate to the findings of the auditors with respect to corporate governance, management conduct, cooperation, and any information flow or system of controls. And of course, like we're doing right now, but also that you've done before this meeting, review the draft financial statements prepared, including the presentation, disclosure, any supporting notes and schedules for accuracy, completeness, and appropriateness. And if required, meeting with the auditor prior to release and approval of the statements to review the audit disclosure and any compliance issues. So some of these items here on the list, we won't go through all of them, but some of them are in the next few pages. We just want to call to some maybe areas of financial statement highlights that might be worth noting. The independent auditors report we did basically discuss. Next up here, we have the statement of financial position. So now we're getting into some of the numbers and kind of showing where the position was as of year end last year compared to 2021. And we can see kind of increases on the cash and investment side. Overall, there was, based on the surplus position that we'll see in a moment here, but there was additional cash set up. Of course, there was some temporary borrowing to offset that. But into some of my notes here, we do have an investment balance of 3.1 million there. Like the statement of remeasurement or the unrealized gain shows, that's really a market of 3.5. So about just under 400,000 that's unrealized. We do have our receivable balance there, 1.8 last year compared to 1.5 this year of receivables. It actually dropped overall, which is good. There's some host fees. However, there is because of the timing, the HST itself, there was a large rebate claim that was sitting as receivable due to construction work near year end. So that's what kind of keeps the balance a little bit higher there. And then the other receivables in there, what we do have noted, there is some long-term receivables associated to that. The investment in Blue Water Power, which increases based on the change in equity, dividends, and the position in the year. So that's reflected there. And then the small investment in the municipal corporation, the small number of the investment in municipal corporations shown there. On the liability side, of course, there's that big increase in payables and accrued liabilities. I'm sure everyone's looking at there. Mainly 1.3, almost 1.4 million of that is specifically for construction as a year end for some certificate payments that needed to be set up. So it's a timing thing there. Accrued interest, there wasn't enough to change the number based on any sort of trivial changes. So it's similar to prior period. Deferred revenue is the gas tax money that's essentially in there. And then municipal debt, what we did is we kept the temporary borrowing on a separate line item. Eventually that'll be a full out loan with the appropriate ministry there. But for now, we set it up as temporary borrowing. So overall, the net financial surplus of just over $7 million compared to 9 last year. We do know that the temporary borrowing being a big chunk of that, bringing that number down a little bit. However, if you look below, we do have tangible capital assets, which is a big increase, and we'll see the detail there why in just a minute. So overall, we have an accumulated surplus position that moved and increased overall by about $2.4 million there on the bottom. So the annual surplus and the change in net financial assets. So we do have the surplus, the 2.4 million above. We do have the sale of, we do have the amortization that we need to take into account here and really reconcile how we get to that 7.1. The big piece of that, we have acquisition of tangible capital assets. It's not all new assets. There are some in progress, but you can see that's quite a big number based on the projects that are ongoing. We have the detail there for the change in laws, as well as some loss on disposal of assets and some sale of assets. And the amortization numbers picked up here. So this is where we settle on the 7.1 million of total net financial surplus at the end of the year. So still quite a positive position there. Next up is the statement of operations itself and the accumulated surplus at the bottom. But to stay on the top there, we show our revenues by type of revenue and our expenditures by department. Basically a PSAB requirement here, and that's compared to the budgeted figures that we pulled out of the information that was provided to show essentially a bit of a comparison with the budget. However, we do know that the budget doesn't include amortization, it doesn't include payment on debt, or it's factored in differently. So that's the PSAB difference here that we show. So overall, the taxation, user charges, and host reimbursements up in the user charges as well. Water, sewer, and transfer payments, all that makes about 10.4 million against expenditures of about 7.9, just under 8. So that's a surplus of 2.5 based on the statements. A laws adjustment factors in here. So our annual surplus of 2.4 million, like I mentioned before, is what changes the number from that 60 million over to the 62,700,000 there that we have. So how does that number build up? What I like to show here is the accumulated surplus summary, which really breaks down what's in the assets, what's in reserves, what's in reserve funds separated for water and sewer. So here's how it all boils down. We have the 55 million. We do have a township surplus. We see zeros on both sides there. That's by design to properly reflect and bring the township surplus to zero and just take the difference into our reserves, which are the capital projects and the planning and industrial promotion kind of area there. And then everything else, how it shakes down, reserved by council, and then the water funds, big jump to the water reserve fund there. So how the 6334 changes over to the 62,747 on the bottom line there. Well, that's where we see how the activity shakes down. So the big chunk in the water, some jump in the capital, and then overall on the top there, the invested intangible capital assets less the unfunded portion. So that's the detail that makes up the accumulated surplus. The invested in capital assets, we put the chart here to show what the 55 million kind of breaks down based on type of asset, any additions for the year. And I'll just highlight there on the assets under construction, that's where we have the big addition for the year. And so additions in the year, a bit of a list there. We got the new condenser for the arena, McGregor Street to Centennial Ave, part paved, and then the first school road, Brickyard line there. So some of the projects are ongoing. Assets in construction includes the renovations and additions to the new community hall, and then the Hickory Creek Road construction, just to name the bigger ones there. So the 84 million of cost less the accumulated amortization of 28 million 942, that brings us to that 55,575 that you've seen on these other statements. And then this last one here before some questions, just the COVID-19 impact lingering. Of course, it did in to the 2021 period. We did highlight some of the detail, working with your management there just to kind of notify some of the items here and what was done. Really, what we're taking out of it is just informational, how budgeting maybe it was impacted and some estimates, and that the federal and provincial governments provided a bit of operating financial relief under the Safe Restart Agreement. So just kind of calling to that and just kind of showing some detail that happened in the year. So those are the highlights of the statements. Of course, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions? It's a sign of a good presentation when there's no questions. Do we need a motion to receive and file that presentation? Yes. Councillor Morris and Councillor White, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll wish you a good evening. Hopefully the storm doesn't hit you too hard.
Yeah, it's rolled right in. Am I still screen sharing? I didn't know if I took it off, but
No, you're good now.
no, good there. Okay. Well, thanks again. If there's any follow-up, of course, I always lay it out there. We kind of go through a lot of detail quite quickly there, but if there's any follow-up, just let me know through the management there. We can definitely get any answers addressed. And I do want to just voice that it was, great working with the team there to get everything together. And yeah, I guess at this point, everything's in good shape. We will get that FIR filed off and get that signed off relatively soon here to kind of finalize everything. Okay.
Okay, great.
Great.
We will admit Mr. Pickfield,
Thanks, John.
and I'm
Thank you very
sure
much. Yep.
John
Have a great night.
gonna go adjust. Thanks, John. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
There we go. Hi, Peter. Are you there? We can see that you're on, but we don't hear you or.
I'm
There you
here
are.
now. Can you see
Thank
me?
Yep, thanks for joining us.
You can hear me all right?
Yes, sorry for the 3-minute delay. Is Alex joining us tonight as well?
No, I told Alex he didn't have to join us. I thought I could handle it tonight. I know you don't have a lot of time for the report, so.
No problem. Council has had a chance to read your report and I'll turn it over to you for the
Great,
presentation.
thanks. And I hope next year I can actually attend in person.
Yes, we would love to have you come to the new office. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And I think that something is lost by not being able to do it in person. So, and so next year, let's plan to do that. And I'll probably be speaking to council before then because there's a few other issues. So before I launch into the report, there is an elephant in the room, and that is that the Ministry of the Environment is still making a decision on the terms of reference for the WM waste optimization project, the landfill expansion, the vertical expansion they're proposing. We've heard nothing on that. The last we have periodically checked in with the ministry about the timing of when they might release their determination on that. So I have nothing new to report on it. So that's why I didn't really report anything in the material I provided. But that, of course, could be a big factor for the next coming year in terms of dealing with the landfill site. So it's going to be potentially an eventful year related to dealing with those issues. So you've got my report. I think I'll start by just reminding everybody what we do every year here, and that is, it is a really, to me, it is somewhat unique in the province, though we have a team set up, a multidisciplinary team that does a comprehensive, basically environmental and financial audit of the landfill operations over the course of the year. And the team is composed of Wilf Ruland, who specializes in surface and groundwater. We have John Emeljano, who specializes in noise impacts. Dr. Tony Vandervoorn, who has a lot of long-term experience in dealing with issues of air quality, and he deals with air quality in terms of just general air quality, methane and other things coming from the landfill, but also dust, odor, and also looks carefully at the litter issue, which is sort of in his general store of knowledge. And then we also so we have those issues, but we also have issues related to potential noise impacts that are studied by our noise expert, Mr. John Emeljano. We have a landfill engineer who looks comprehensively at the landfill operations. And his name is Andrew Garland. And we have a financial specialist who does a financial audit, and that's Bill Day. So I thought I'd mention their names because they're big contributors, obviously, and their reports, their sub-reports are really crucial to all of this. And what our team does every year, what we do is we look at not only at the annual report that's issued by WM, which has all of the detailed monitoring data that's required under the environmental compliance approval, but we look at complaints information. We look at the ministry's monthly reporting on their weekly inspections. And we also look at all the issues related to the financial operation of the facility. And we talk to the municipality and staff about complaints that they might be receiving, et cetera. So we have a large store of information that allows us to come to an overall assessment of how the landfill has operated and performed over the year. And this year, the report is similar to previous years. The first thing we looked at is, do they comply generally with all of the regulatory requirements for the landfill? And they do. They meet all those regulatory requirements. And so there were no significant issues related to offsite impacts again this year. So, the landfill is in that way reasonably well managed, in the sense that there are no reported offsite groundwater impacts. There shouldn't be. This is a clay soil environment. But it still takes care to make sure that it's done properly. No air quality issues, aside from there were a few specific exceedances. There were also no significant other issues related to not meeting provincial standards. So overall, the landfill continues to meet its regulatory and permitting requirements. But just as we reported in the last few years, there are frayed edges to this landfill that we've noticed. And the frayed edges relate to a few issues that really could be better addressed in terms of best management practices, and issues that we've identified over the years that we think should be cleaned up and addressed that haven't been fully addressed yet. So we keep pushing on some of those issues, and I'll highlight a few of those in a minute. But the one thing I will say this year is that WM has been more responsive this year than in past years. to specific issues, and has started to address some of our concerns particularly related to the thoroughness of their complaints reporting and other things. They have improved, and they have been responsive, and we've had positive meetings with them to address those issues. I think there's two probably reasons why we're seeing some better communication and improvements. One is last year we started to institute a new procedure whereby after we submit the draft annual report, almost immediately afterwards, we sit down with them and discuss the issues before they come back with written responses. That worked well to get some things off the table even before we had to get deal with some of their written responses. And we're going to do that again this year because we think that that dialogue is helpful. It doesn't replace a written response from WM, but it's helpful in terms of making sure that the experts are sort of understanding each other's opinions and potentially bridging the gap. So that's the one thing that's been helpful. The second thing is that I think that WM understands that as it moves into a big ask, which is the major expansion, that it needs to make sure that it comes into that process with as high quality of standards as possible in terms of the operating of the existing site. Now that's my speculation. I can't prove that in any way, but I do think that's been a factor in terms of them sitting up and somehow taking notice. Having said that, I think they can do better, and we think they can do better. Our team thinks they can do better. So the key areas and some of which you've heard in past years that we think they need to deal with. So on the issue of leachate levels from the old landfill site, and I brought this up in past annual reviews, there's mounding happening underneath the old landfill site. It's above the groundwater table, and they have been involved in a program of addressing that issue by removing the leachate and bringing the mound down and removing quantities of leachate. And over the last number of years, we've really pushed them, that's our team, has really pushed them to set targets for reducing the amount of leachate generated from the old landfill and how much is going to be removed each year. And they met that standard. For the last 2 years, they met and exceeded those standards that we suggested as a starting point. But we're still seeing mounding above. So we're still seeing a situation where there's not perfect containment because it's mounding above the groundwater level. So which means there's an outward push of leachate potentially rather than an inward draw of it. So we are continuing to recommend that they focus razor sharp on this issue and that they set standards not just for assume standards for removing leachate, but they also set standards for eliminating this mounding problem that's happening in the landfill site. So that's the leachate issue. Surface water monitoring, there's the continued problem that we've not been able to convince WM to go back to the ministry and go back to the old monitoring approach with respect to groundwater monitoring. They're still relying on in 24. This is an old concern we've had for a number of years. That in 2014 they got from the ministry a reduced requirement in terms of monitoring surface water parameters. That if they can demonstrate through their bioassay tests that there's no immediate shock to the system from a surface water point of view, there's a number of parameters they don't have to worry about in terms of monitoring and exceeding. That's entrenched in the document from 2014. We've had dialogue with them on this issue, and we're going to renew our dialogue again this year to see if we can get them to agree to go to the ministry and talk about a better approach on that surface water monitoring issue. The third thing with surface, and this is also a surface water monitoring issue, is that we're continuing to see these exceedances of suspended solids from erosion from the landfill during construction periods into the surface water. And so now they've taken some steps in following some recommendations we provided to try to mitigate, but we don't believe they're being aggressive enough in avoiding the problem of erosion and loading of suspended solids. And so we're seeing these exceedances of provincial standards from time to time. There were less occurrences of that this year, but there was one exceedance, which was a record exceedance in terms of the level of exceedance. So based on that, we have made recommendations again this year to develop a more comprehensive program for controlling surface water input from erosion impacts and impacts to surface water from suspended solids. And then the other big issue is odor. There are odor complaints. There were odor complaints starting in about 2018, 2019, really, that just skyrocketed up from previous years in terms of there were over 50 odor complaints from the landfill in a year, which is a big change from all the previous years of landfill's operation. Part of that was assumed to be, by WM at least, proclaimed to be associated with the solid facility. But that closed down. The township was successful in closing that operation down. We prosecuted them. We got them out of town. That operation was closed down in 2020. And we're still getting high levels of complaints, not as high as the 50, but we're getting in the range of 30 complaints in the last 2 years. And I think we're getting more complaints again this year. So I don't believe that, or we don't believe, the team doesn't believe that they're doing enough to address odor issues. And they need to focus in on that issue. So, so those were the main issues. That we found this year. Again, there weren't as many as last year. We think their operations are improved, but there are a few other issues that I wanted to go through quickly. What I want to do in my last few minutes here, because I know that we don't have a lot of time, is to just go through the recommendations that I have for you in terms of a resolution. And what I wanted to do is point to a couple of other issues that are still hanging on as issues that we've continued to keep in our recommendations to WM and to the township. So if you turn to, I think the simplest place for council to find this is in page 3 of my summary report, my memo, a recommendation to council.
Peter, can we open it up for questions before we move on to recommendations?
Yeah, okay. If you want to do that, can I just touch on a couple other issues just before we do that quickly? Then I wanted to just report on a couple things before we go to the recommendations. I wanted to make 2 other quick points. One is that 3 other points quickly. One is that we're continuing to recommend that the ministry, that the township meet with the Ministry of the Environment and try and return the landfill to daily inspections. You've heard those arguments in past years. But we think a landfill of this scale and given its level of maturity, daily inspections will improve the quality of compliance at the landfill and improve the best management practices at the landfill. And we think that we should continue to push for daily inspections. And then the second issue is this year we actually included in our annual report a review of the financial assurances program, which is basically the long-term insurance plan.
Hi, Peter.
Yes.
The hydro is out and I'm at my house and I know it's out in Watford because we just lost connection with the mayor. So I'm not sure if we should wait a minute or so. I'm sorry. It looked like Mayor Rumbouts had been frozen. So I just want I'll message Trevor if you don't mind and see what he suggests.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry. How long was it out for? I've been talking for a little bit here.
It just went out about 45 seconds ago.
Okay.
So just
I'll hang in then. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. Okay, here you go. Hi, Peter. I've got Trevor on speaker.
I've got you on speaker to the.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Peter, I'm sorry you can't finish the meeting without a live stream on YouTube, so we're either gonna have to move you to the next meeting of council and redo this delegation or have another special meeting or something.
I do see, like on my screen, it is showing that we're still live on YouTube and that it is recording. I think it made me host.
Oh, it switched over to make you host.
It switched over to make me host. Yeah.
Do you think we should all try to sign in again?
I don't believe they have power at the township office, so
Oh, I see.
there's no generator.
Okay.
I'm not, like, we can hear each other, so I can hear Peter here, he can hear me and you, because I have you on speaker. We're both on the live stream, yeah. Okay, thanks. I guess we'll hold tight if you want to take a 5-minute break, Peter.
Sure, we might as well. I mean, before, rather than reschedule now, we should probably see if we can do it tonight.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Okay,
Okay, I'll be back in a few.
sure. Should I just stay right here?
If you want, I know Trevor said he'd call back in about 5 minutes, so.
Okay, I'll
If
just
you-
stay online and wait.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, we did have some technical difficulties, but I believe we are back live on YouTube. Sorry about that, Peter. Our hydro went out
No
here at
worries.
the office, but luckily we do have a generator that backed us up and we were able to get back on.
Good. I'm glad you're back on. And
Yes.
so, Madam Chair, we left, you said you wanted to open it up to questions, but just before we do, I wanted to cover 3 quick issues just so that you council has the full picture.
Okay.
And the first issue that I was speaking about was that, as in past years, we're continuing to ask that the Tribune, or we continue to ask that the township pursue a meeting with the Ministry of the Environment and WM to return to daily MECP inspections. And
Just an update on that. We did have a meeting at AMO. Counselor Morris and I attended along with Amanda, and
yes,
we did solidify again at that meeting the importance of having those daily inspections, and showed them some evidence of the litter and issues that we have been experiencing, spoke of the odor issues. And it seemed like their recommendation was that that was something that council needed to be negotiating with WM. So
good.
that was where we got from that.
Well, that's actually progress, because WM originally had agreed to fund daily inspections by by giving some funding, providing some funding, or by to the ministry related to that. There were concerns around that. But if it's if the ministry is agreeing that they would go to daily inspections, maybe there's something that we can deal with on that issue. So I think the next step is still to try to set up a meeting, maybe with the district office and WM, to talk about how we can get back to daily inspections for all the reasons that we've set out in a number of previous annual reports. And then the other issue this year that's a bit different is that we actually have provided an analysis of the financial assurances program that was the last one that was submitted to the Ministry of the Environment. The next one's not going to be submitted for several years to the Ministry of the Environment, but there's a new requirement in the waste approval document that was put in place, that they're required to continually update their financial assurances program on an annual basis. So this opens an opportunity for us to dialogue with WM about how some issues that we've identified in our review of the financial assurances program. And those are set out in the annual report. There are issues that really require discussion more than anything else. And so we're hoping that there will be, with our discussions with WM and all the other issues, we'll have a good discussion on financial assurances, and the end result will be we'll be able to suggest that there's ways they can strengthen their financial assurances program, which, just to remind council, is basically the insurance program for the landfill, that when WM's time is over, when their operating life is over, there's still literally hundreds of years of potential contaminating lifespan left in the landfill. So there has to be continual monitoring, there has to be room for contingencies. All those programs have to be in place. We don't think WM's going anywhere. They're going to be here until the end of the operating life, but after the end of the operating life, there's a long life after that needs to be looked after through these financial assurances that will have to be in place. The ministry covers that in their licensing process, but the township has an interest in making sure that insurance program is adequate. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to just highlight is that the complaints tracking has, it's time to meet again, I think, with WM on the complaints issues, just to see where they are and where they're going. You remember we had a meeting a little over a year ago. We had a meeting with WM a year and a half ago, I guess now. We had a meeting with WM where we went through and they agreed to a number of things that we had asked for, but they didn't agree to a number of other items. Items like getting WM a little bit more savvy in terms of social network, and so in terms of providing the way people actually communicate these days to deal with complaints, rather than just the telephone line. So we had a number of specific recommendations around how to improve their complaint monitoring and management program. And I think it would be appropriate to resume that dialogue in the fall sometime. So So that by the time we get to the finalizing this annual report, there might be some more progress made on that issue. So, so those are my comments, and I'll just turn it over to council for questioning, and then I can just go through the recommendations at the end.
Okay, I just had one question. I know WM has been speaking with Amanda and I about the daily cover that is allowed to be used. I believe they're limited right now to soils, auto fluff and the chips. Yeah, wood chips and tar. And that's the auto fluff. So they're very limited. Oh, and tarps. And the tarps we're not happy with because on Monday morning when they pull those tarps back, there's major odor issues. The auto fluff seems to be brought out onto the roads and into the ditches and doesn't seem to be very effective in suppressing the odors. They had said that they would like to look into some alternative methods. Is that something that your team could help us with?
Yes, we have provided advice on that in the past, and we certainly can. On the auto fluff issue, WM has committed to ending the receipt of auto fluff, and the use of that it's not useful for cover, and it creates problems because it tracks on, it's almost impossible to control it tracking off site on truck wheels and creating that problem of, it's not just a litter problem, it's actually a potential groundwater surface water problem too, because that auto fluff material has contaminants in it that if it gets in contact with water creates a surface water impact issue. So those they've now said they are not going to take that material anymore. And my understanding is if they haven't implemented yet, I'd be surprised. So that is no longer an option. The options are soils. Contaminated soils can be used for that purpose too. But the main option that they've used is this tarping, which is really a problematic solution. And our team has been pushing to end that practice because you can't control, especially in the summer, you can't control when you remove those tarps, you just create an immediately an odor hit.
Yes, we do notice it on Monday mornings. I know complaints from the community go way up on Monday mornings.
Yeah.
So
we have suggestions for that, and we can engage WM on that if that's your direction to find out what solutions.
Yeah, I believe all of council is anxious to have some more alternative methods that are maybe more impactful and work.
So, I mean, we could review that with we have a really good expert on that issue in Tony Vandervoor, and he's one of the best in terms of his experience and knowledge in dealing with these things. So we could get him to look at it. I don't know how you would want to proceed with that. Maybe, do you want this to be added to the list of things that we discuss with WM, or do you want us to come back to council first?
I think that a discussion with WM, I know that they're open to some alternative things, but we as a municipality don't know, do these things that they're suggesting work? Like we would like your advice as far as that's concerned. Like if they want to use foam or something like that to do the daily cover, we want to make sure that they're going to work before we say, yes, that's something that we would be interested in pursuing. So I think having a conversation with your team and them would be a good starting point just to give some alternatives. And I know that the Ministry of Environment is open. That was part of our discussion with them at AMO as well. And they're open to approving more things, but they want to know that council is on board with those items that they're suggesting. So.
Okay. That sounds good. Then I'll include that I could even include it in the covering letter that goes to WM with the annual report. And I wonder whether we should include another item to the resolution that just directs me to do that, if that makes sense.
I think council would be comfortable with that. They're all nodding. So, yep.
Okay, so we'll add some wording to that effect. So that's, maybe council has other questions before I get into the.
Any other questions, council? I was wondering, as far as the landscaping is concerned, I noticed that they are doing some changes to the north berm. Like
Okay.
raising it. It almost looks like they're putting more dirt on top of the north berm along Zion line. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, it might be worth your landscaping guy looking into. I think it's probably to try to reduce the litter. I know that they have some major issues, especially on windy days. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing to increase that height, but it'd be interesting to see how that's gonna impact the trees and the other vegetation that's along that berm.
Okay.
Have you guys noticed that? Like, they're adding dirt to
Yeah,
the
they are.
top of the berm.
Yeah, they disclosed it when we were there. They're doing it for exactly the reason.
Yeah, to try to reduce the litter
And that's the north berm, the north side, you said?
along Zion line. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And that's the only questions I had. So if you want to go on to your recommendation, that would be great. I don't think council has any other questions.
Okay, so the recommendation is similar to last year's, is we're recommending that you direct me to by letter to WM to request that WM implement all the recommendations of the land. First of all, the landscaping inspection report, which really is down to only one issue. It's there's a tree that needs to be replaced that we've asked for a couple of years that be replaced. And also they have in their, one of the things they agreed to was when they closed the site to install a picnic bench and a bike rack at the dog park. I know it seems like a small thing, but they've told us that so far that they're going to wait till the end of the landfill to do that, and we don't see why that community shouldn't be able to enjoy.
I'm going to turn this over to Wayne, Councillor Morris. He sits on the land use or land and use committee, and or on Parks and Rec. Did it come up at Parks and Rec? Okay.
It was mentioned at Parks and Rec, and I think they put a bench there. I'm not saying about a bike rack, but I think they have put the bench there, from my understanding.
Okay.
I'm not, yeah, it would be good to check in. I'm not sure if it was at the dog park though. It might have been on the trail partway.
Yeah.
They put a bench partway down the trail.
Yeah, partway back the trail.
Yeah. Ryan and John were out there looking at it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the recommendation is to still maintain the $5,000 line of credit. We're down to $5,000 on the line of credit, just because there's a couple of those two items that sort of are hanging out there, the replacement of the tree, and it's diminishing returns, but it keeps them a little bit honest to maintain it. So, and they, on an annual basis, they have to continue to maintain the tree cover and make sure that it's working and functioning. So our recommendation was to just maintain that $5,000.
No, with the expansion, it's going to go up higher. Could that change the whole landscape plan completely then, Peter?
Well,
To try to hide it more?
I'm
Like,
assuming they will need a new landscape plan, and they'll need a new approach to dealing with the visual impacts, assuming they move ahead with it. And that'll be part of the environmental assessment process to assess that and decide what needs to be done. So it's hard to speculate on where that will go. But right now, I think we just focus on the existing approvals until and then I think there'll be a whole new dialogue if the new landfill moves ahead, the new landfill proposal moves ahead.
okay.
So the next recommendation is related to all of the specific recommendations of the landfill engineering report, the noise report, the air quality report, the surface and groundwater report, and dust and all of that. We have very specific recommendations. We put them into a tracking sheet, and we ask that we just get authorization to forward the report, and that council recommends that WM address all of the specific comments and recommendations of those reports. And then the fourth issue is the financial assurances program. And I didn't speak in any detail about the financial assurances, but there are some outstanding issues. They owe us some money again this year. Seems like that's true every year. It's funny how they make these errors and they always never seem to be in their favor. They're always in our favor. They're always, or they're never in our favor. They're always in their favor. It's not a lot of money, and usually they're very responsive in terms of responding to these outstanding issues when Bill finds them. So we're asking that you authorize us to forward the financial audit and with the recommendations to address all of those shortfalls. Not a large amount of money, but to be addressed. And then the fifth recommendation is that the meeting, the one I've already spoken to about the meeting with the ministry, WM and the township, and this would be good, really useful and supplementary follow-up to the meeting you had at AMO, because it would allow for staff to maybe, you could reflect back on the direction we got at AMO, and then maybe with staff and WM in the room, we could actually, we can make some progress on this issue. So that's the fifth recommendation. The sixth recommendation relates to the financial assurances program. And basically what we're asking is that we provided a series of comments in attachment 3 to the annual report on the financial assurances program. The WM review and respond to the findings, and that there be a meeting with WM and the TRT to address the findings. And based on that, there'd be appropriate update to the financial assurances plan. And then on the issue of complaints, what we're recommending is similar to last year, almost identical to last year, is first of all, that council continue to track complaints that they receive from residents on the landfill in this office through a tracking program. And I believe that's being done by staff.
Yes, it is.
And secondly, requesting that a meeting with WM be scheduled to obtain an update from WM on efforts to address outstanding issues, because we did have some outstanding items from our last meeting. They and hopefully they may be looking at them more positively now, so we should request a meeting to discuss those to improve their complaints management program. Third thing is to direct the TRT to incorporate the outcomes of those steps into the annual report. So by the time we get to the finalizing the annual report, which is usually in early November, we'll have better things to report on the complaints management side of things. And then we'd also continue to recommend an annual practice of meetings between the township and WM to discuss improvements and enhancements to their complaints management program. It's just doing it on an annual basis, and we think the next meeting should probably happen in the fall of this year, if that works out. So I know it's a busy fall for with contested elections and all that stuff, but maybe we can fit that in. And then the next recommendation is the standard one, that you direct me to come back to council once we've done all this work and talked to WM and tried to address the issues with a final annual report, so you can know exactly where things stand. And as usually the report comes the first meeting in November, which I don't know whether this is an election year, whether that'll work or not, but I'm not sure, but
We will have to get back to you on the date of that. I'm not sure how that will work in terms of timing, but
I mean, it'd be nice if this council finished it off rather than the next.
yeah, the 15th of November is the inaugural meeting, so
Well, we'll see what we
might
can.
be a good one for the second meeting of council. It won't be during the inaugural meeting, but maybe early December.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to the timing of that, but it may be the new council that deals with the final report. So we'll see which it'll be a good inauguration for the new council into the, and maybe there'll be some returning faces too, So that completes my report. Except that we wanted to add in that one additional recommendation. So maybe I can just provide some wording around that to.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. And then we'll finalize that. We'll finalize that wording tomorrow. But essentially, it's about a meeting that would happen. First of all, we would ask the TRT to review the issue being the cover material, and then we've been setting up a meeting. So the recommendation would be to direct that the TRT review the issue of the use of cover material for daily cover, and provide recommendations, and also can set up a meeting with WM to discuss how they're going to address that issue.
Yes, and to present some potential options for council to maybe champion with the ministry,
Right. And
like the
then,
best options.
so that would be the substance of that recommendation. And we'd also I'd probably include some wording that says, and report back to council with the final annual report on what progress was made on that issue.
That sounds good. Any questions or comments before we pass the resolution? We need a mover and a seconder to pass that. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor White. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks a lot, Peter, for your time. And like you said, it would be great to have you sitting around the council table again in person next year.
Let's make it happen. I'm looking forward to it.
For sure.
Take care, folks.
Yep. Okay, that concludes the public portion of our meeting. We do need a mover and a seconder to go in camera for the items listed on the agenda. Thank you, Councillor White and Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. We apologize for the on and off of this meeting, just technical difficulties and some timing issues, but we appreciate all of you for tuning in. And just watching through our window here, we did get quite a thunderstorm. So our hopes and prayers that everyone was safe and no major damage was done during that. And we will see you soon. Take care.